What's up, brothers? Hope everyone's doing well out there. I was thinking about something and I wanted to turn the camera on and come out here and share it with you guys and see what you think. There's a bitter pill that a lot of guys out there have a hard time swallowing. But this is important information. If you understand this, I should say the guys that do understand this and they accept it and they get out there and push forward, they do just fine. But the guys that don't understand this, they get destroyed. They get chewed up and spit out. And that is that if you're out there dating, now this may not hold true for people that are in marriages, a lot of times it does hold true in marriages, but if you have a healthy long-term relationship, it may not apply to you. But if you're somebody that's out there dating and trying to meet new people, it definitely applies to you. Anyways, that is that you're not the only guy in the picture. Okay? And I don't know why every guy is consciously aware of this, but 90% of guys are subconsciously unaware of this. They choose to be unaware. They choose to turn a blind eye. But anytime you're dealing with an issue where a woman is ghosting, flaking, playing hard to get, I'll put it like this. When I was 29 and I experienced single life for the first time, I got out of a 9-year relationship. I didn't know what it was like. Social media was here. Dating apps were here. It was different. And I would meet women, and a lot of times they would play this little cat and mouse game. Right? They would be interested in talking and texting, but I had a hard time getting them to meet up, and eventually they would usually be down with it. Maybe it'd be like a late on a Saturday night, they would just hit me up and want to come over. But eventually they would get over it and they would want to hang out. And I would credit myself. I would say, well, it must be my game. It must be my amazing looks. Somehow I won her over. Right? But that was blue-pilled. That was stupid. That wasn't the case at all. The truth is, she already had a man when I met her. Now, maybe they were in a real relationship. Maybe they were married. No, they weren't married. Maybe they were in a real relationship. Maybe it was just some guy that was taking her out once or twice a week. But in his mind, that was his lady. And he was putting effort into being with her. He was really trying to make something happen. I knew nothing about the guy. But there's always another guy in the picture. And when you enter the picture, when a woman's playing hard to get, when she's ghosting, when there's a cat and mouse game going on, usually it's because she finds you attractive and she's looking for the right moment to sneak away and try you out. And if she has a good time with you and you have a good time with her, she'll delete his number and she'll move on to you. They call this monkey branching. I don't like to call it monkey branching because that makes it sound like it's something that's strategic, like they're consciously aware of. But in reality, they're just following their feelings. That's what dating is. Guys, dating is not you find your holy virgin woman and you take her out, you pick her up in the horse and carriage and you take her out with a bouquet of roses that you greet her with and take her to a nice fancy restaurant and a walk on the beach, a walk in the park. And she looks at you and tells you how sweet you are and how great of a guy you are. And that's not the way it works, right? This is dating. Dating means they're seeing other people. Point blank. Now, the reason why this can be an issue is because a lot of guys out there are either afraid to compete or they're disgusted by the thought of having to compete. And they go into each situation blue-pilled. You know, they go into each, you know, there's a new scenario, a new woman they've met on Tinder, a new woman they've asked out at their gym or whatever, and they start talking to her, and they realize, you know, she seems hesitant. What's going on here? And then they do a little bit of investigating, and they find out there's some other guy in the picture. And they're devastated, they're heartbroken. They're like, well, how could she do this? Why wouldn't she just be honest with me? That's the game. It's competition. But the thing about it is, the other guy is like, he's not solid. He's not firm on the seat. She's looking for somebody else. She's entertaining other people, and you're one of the people that she's entertaining. You know, we always hear these things like men are the disposable ones out there in dating, and it's very true. Men pursue women, they bend over backwards, they break their backs for women, do anything they can to try to win the woman over. Women can just swap you out. It's very easy for them to do it. If you're a woman watching this video, if you're somebody that does go one man at a time, and you're you're a good classic woman, I'm not talking about you. You don't have to argue, but you know, we're talking about the 75 to 80% out there that are doing this. And this is tough because in 2025, I mean, in 1999, doesn't matter. There is no government or religious institution out there that binds a man and a woman together. Okay, sure, we have marriage, but marriage is a business contract that can be breached and broken at any given moment. Nobody cares. It means very little. I mean, it may have sentimental value to you and your family, but in the grand scheme of things, in society, it doesn't mean much. And we're all aware of this, right? So, love is fleeting. A man and a woman get married. And if that love is disappearing and she's craving it somewhere else, even if the sexual satisfaction is disappearing and she's craving that validation, she's craving validation somewhere else, you know, a lot of times she'll just crack open the door a little bit. You know, it's not that she wants to leave, it's not that she wants to cheat, she just wants to crack the door open a little bit and just get a little bit of validation. Problem is, once she does that, again, it's a new guy in the picture. And he's just a normal guy, right? And he sees her as somebody that he could potentially be with. So he's pursuing her. And if she likes him and he likes her, she may just leave. Or maybe she just might have sex with him once or multiple times. You know, married people probably have more sex than single people, and I'm not talking about with each other. By and large, in the United States, I think married couples have more sex outside of their marriage than single people have, you know, even though they have the freedom to do it. They're just sneaky about it. It's just true, man. It's just true. You ever worked at a company and you kind of see who's hooking up with who? You know, how many... I mean, I know for a fact right now, if I wanted to get laid, if I wanted to go through my phone and pick somebody to hook up with, the easiest... And I don't mean this... I guess there's no way to say this in like a nice way, but the easiest ones to get with would be married women. They're desperate housewives. They need it bad. And that's what dating does to us, right? That's what not having an institution that holds a man and a woman together, that binds a man and a woman together, not having that causes this. You know, and you can just expect it to take place. So, you don't really know if you're the first guy the last guy, or somewhere in between. You never really have any clue. Right? I've met women who I was attracted to and I would talk to. You know, they may look me up on Messenger or whatever. I don't even ask for the number. We're messaging back and forth for several days or weeks, and I don't find out till a month in that they're married. Right? I've had that happen before. It's an awkward question. When somebody's coming on to you, you don't ask them if they're married. You just assume they're not. Right? But they'll do shit like that. You know, and what I want to talk about also is this concept of the 80-20 rule. For those of you that are still here, it's kind of a shift, but it's related to the same topic. A lot of people are robotic about this. They're so systematic, they just take it as a literal term. They think the very top 20% of men, you know, the exact 20% of men at the top are hooking up with basically all the women. But that's not the way it works. Okay? Your competition are the people that are in your bracket. Right now, there's some lady working at Burger King, BBW, smokes cigarettes, greasy ass hair, been wearing the same clothes for the last 3 days. And she's married with 2 kids with the janitor of Springfield High. You know, he's 5'6", damn near anorexic looking, got some good vascularity in his arms though. Wears a pair of baggy Wrangler jeans and a sleeveless shirt and got a set of keys on the side of his hip. Pushes the cart around with the mop and the broom and all the cleaning supplies. But in his bracket, he's the alpha. Right? He's the alpha of that bracket. And then you got a bracket way up at the top. You got Tom Brady and Giselle. You know, physically gifted models, athletes, scholars, worth hundreds of millions of dollars. That's a different bracket. Tom Brady's an alpha of that bracket, right? But there's 20 to 30 brackets somewhere in between those 2 brackets. That's the bottom and the top. And to give you an example of how this works, let's say you got 5 girls and they go to a hotel room and they meet an NBA basketball team. And just the starting 5. On that starting 5, you got the star of the team. He's the fucking superstar. He scores 35 points a game. A-list celebrity, movie star. And then you got 4 role players. All 5 of those women want to hook up with the superstar. He can have all 5 of them at once, and his buddies might get left out. That's the 80-20 rule. Doesn't mean that, I should say, doesn't mean that the top 20% get 80% of the women. It means that the top 20% of each bracket. So, you know, there's guys in the top bracket. There's guys playing professional sports that aren't really getting much action because they're in a bracket full of Tom Brady's, right? And he's stealing all the women. So, I mean, if that makes sense to you, I mean, it's kind of difficult to explain, but if you want to succeed, you got to understand it's all about intrasexual competition. A lot of guys want to say it's not competition, the only competition is myself. But there's always another man in the picture. So you have to be the alpha of that bracket if you want to succeed. Now, at the end of the day, it's all about emotionalism. It's all about who she likes the most. So being that alpha ain't too difficult. You know, you just kind of have to have really the smarts to understand when a woman actually likes you. You know, and then just ride the wave let it happen. But she's going to go with the man that brings her the most stimulation. But I don't know. I think the main reason why I wanted to talk about this subject is because I think the biggest reason why guys tend to fail out there is because they'll start talking to a woman, they're getting mixed signals, and they find out she's talking to somebody else. And suddenly you feel like, you know, you're doing whatever you can to try to, like, she's slipping away and you're trying to keep her, you're trying to make sure she doesn't get too far, you know. But in reality, you got to stand your fucking ground. You know, you got to be a little bit cocky about the situation and understand that competition is natural. I think we wish it wasn't this way, but it is this way. So don't worry about what she's doing. Don't worry about why she's ghosting. In fact, you might be the one that's intruding. You know, you might be the one that's pulling her away from the guy that she's with. So keep that in mind. But, oh yeah, I remembered what I wanted to say. It's almost like, so where you're at and the women that you can get with, the women that you have access to, if you're a guy that's out there and you're trying to navigate through the dating market, if you're at the very bottom and you're a total loser, that's just the bracket that you're in. So you can date women in that bracket. All you have to do is be the alpha of that bracket. But when you improve yourself, it doesn't necessarily mean you get more women, and this is the big thing. Becoming a top 20% man doesn't mean that you suddenly get women. It means that you're now in the bracket with top 20% men and your competition just got a lot more difficult. It's almost like being a high school athlete. You know, in high school you might be the star of the team, right? There's really no competition, you're the best. And you get recruited to a college. And on the college team, you're one of the best. You're pretty good. You're not the best, but you're up there. You know, you're one injury away from never playing again, but you know, you're up there, but the competition is stiff. You're in a different bracket. Maybe you get drafted to a professional league. And, you know, in the professional league, you're fighting for a spot. You're worth millions of dollars. You're doing better in life than you ever have before, but now you're fighting for a spot. The dating market's kind of the same way. You know, when you're broke, when you're a loser, you deal with women that are dealing with broke losers. That's the bracket. You start to improve yourself, you get a nice physique, all of a sudden you're jacked. And you get a better job. Well, now you're dealing with women that like men that are jacked and that make good money. So guess what? That's your competition. And then maybe you hit it big, you make a lot of money, you're rich. Well, now you're hanging out with women that like rich men. So now your competition is rich men. So it never really gets easier. It's always the same. It's always you competing with your peers. It's always going to be that way. You know, so a lot of these guys that think, well, once the money and status comes along, it's going to be easy. It's not going to be. You're still going to have the exact same issues. Just the competition's going to be tougher. So, well, you know, just something to think about. But I suppose that's all I had to say in this video. Maybe we can finally keep one under 20 minutes long. Hope this video was somewhat informative. And that's about it for today, guys. Until next time, see ya.